It was some time ago when a lady called me on the phone and said, you know, there is a woman psychologist who has a radio program. You should listen to her. She's really good. So the time was not exactly right for me, for my schedule, but I did listen one time. And the first thing I heard what she said was, we hear that more and more teenagers are getting involved in drugs. She may have mentioned preteens, I forget, but teenagers for sure. And she said, when we hear that, the immediate reaction is information has to go out to those kids. They have to know the danger. And then she said, that's not the problem. They know. The problem is they don't care. And I thought, exactly. Why? Manas, ruled by the lower mind. Manas has no discrimination. There is no question asked, what will be the consequences if I do this and that and the other thing? None of it. Ruled by Manas. Do you blame the kids? They don't know. This society doesn't know these things. They do not know systematic training and development of the higher mind of Buddhi is necessary. Our society doesn't teach that. Our educational system doesn't teach that. They don't know. What about the grown-ups? Same thing. Most of the people ruled by Manas. And I just recently, I read the statistics. The average US household is in debt about over $11,000. I thought, and the economy in this country is booming. Why? Why do people spend more than they have? In search for pleasure, isn't it? And I heard Master again and again talk about to various audiences. He said you have to distinguish between necessary necessities and unnecessary necessities, because you don't really need much. But people are seeking satisfaction, instant satisfaction, in external things. Now, the Gita says, O Arjuna, because outer pleasures spring from outer contacts and have beginning and end. They are begetters of misery only. No sage, meaning no intelligent person, seeks happiness from them. And then our Guru comments on this and he says, but having no way to compare with higher experience, man is lost and seeks in outer world, outer things, where they can never find the fulfillment, never. And thus, he said, desires are created. And then he makes a very interesting statement. Desire is thus a fundamental law which keeps this creation going. And so long as there is no end to desire, there is no end to rebirth, meaning we're coming back again and again and again. Next point. Now that's where the Gita begins. But I wanted to give the other points first so that we really understand why the need for introspection. Now we have to understand now from these quotations that I have already given, what do you want? We want bliss consciousness, right? And the world says, no, come here. You get it here. So therefore, have you ever seen a businessman who has no accounting? Business people are practical people, isn't it? They want to know whether they are making money or losing. But when it comes to life itself, most people no accounting. Totally lost. Why? Because they do not know what the goal is. And that is why I stressed it so much. And the Gita stresses it so much. The goal is God. And this is what you want. It is infinite bliss consciousness. And so introspection shows us, where am I going? Am I going towards my goal, or am I going deeper into delusion? And this leads then to war, the famous war within us. And that is a very complex subject in itself. You know, if you read the Gita, especially Master's interpretation, you'll see it's very complex. There's a whole army on both sides. And I do not have time now to go into all that, but I want to just go to the most basic principle. It is a war, you can boil it down to the body identified ego and the soul. And if you understand what I have said before, it's very clear. The soul wants to go home. Oneness with God, infinite bliss consciousness. The ego says, I want to stay here. Now, the ego is supported by manas. Remember what manas is? It's obvious. The soul is supported by buddhi, the higher discrimination. And so there is war. Now, the worst thing is, the worst enemy is the ego, body-identified ego. And if you want to conquer an enemy, you have to understand what he is and how he works. And I want to give you some very nice points here now so that you really understand, because you are involved in war, right? Most people in the world are totally ignorant about that. There's no war in them. They are completely, worldly consciousness, lost in worldly consciousness. Now, do you know what sins are? Sins are, every religion has as a foundation basic laws, certain rules to live a righteous life, to live in harmony with God's laws. In the Bible, you have the Ten Commandments. In the Yoga Sutras, in the Bhagavad Gita, you have the do's and don'ts, basic rules. And if you are going against those rules, that is sin, and that brings suffering. So you don't want to suffer, right? Now, the Master says, this is based on the Gita, sins and sorrow, meaning transgression of laws and the resulting suffering, these two are inseparable from ego consciousness. And then there's another one, habits, bad habits. We are acquiring those things completely innocently, isn't it? Just living in this crazy world, which is totally ignorant. And then you come on a spiritual path and you realize, I have bad habits. Anybody here who doesn't have any or didn't have any? And you remember that some of them are very, very difficult to break, isn't it? You know why it is so difficult? Tell you why. Master said, the ego is attached to them and doesn't want to let him go. Not only that, the ego suggests to you that you are unable to overcome them. Meaning, suggests to you, you are not strong enough. You are not spiritual enough. You can't overcome the bad habits. That's pretty vicious, isn't it? Now you remember that when those thoughts come to you, that is Satan talking to you. And when Satan tells you, you are not strong enough, because we are the soul. What is the soul? The soul is a ray of God's consciousness. It's God within us. And that soul is essentially omnipotent. And the ego wants to paralyze that. Says you cannot. Be aware. Remember that. Trouble is we have been so identified with the ego, we do not know the soul yet, because that comes to spiritual practice. So if Satan tells you, you cannot overcome, you're not strong enough, you're not spiritual enough, what do you do? What do you do? If Satan tells you that, you tell him to go to hell. I hope you understand, I do not swear. I am now strictly discussing territory. Actually, one time a man came to Master and asked him, "Sir, is there really such a thing as hell?" And Master's eyes were dancing with laughter. And he said, "Where do you think you are now?" So we are really in it. We are in this delusion. We are ruled by the ego and manas. That's the place, you want to get out. So with what we do, whenever those negative thoughts come, you affirm, I am the soul. I'm a child of God. I can win. And you make the best effort to live a righteous life in harmony with the divine laws. That's how you are overcoming the ego and manas. And now comes the most powerful weapon to conquer the ego. Is pranayama, energy control. And that is the greatest scientific key of yoga, which have been lost in the Dark Ages, because mankind had lost the knowledge of the final forces in creation. Energy, electricity, atomic energy, all those things were gone. Knowledge of that was gone. And now, because of material science brought these things back, now we can understand again what the science of pranayama means. That is why Mahavatar Babaji and the line of gurus brought this science back. This is a time, this is a special dispensation. These great scientific techniques were given again to mankind. And if you understand the principle, it is quite clear, very simple. Energy control. The Master says, where your energy is, there is your consciousness. Now from the lessons, we're going to have a class on this, energization exercises. We know that most of the energy that we use comes in directly through the medulla, which is the mouth of God in the Bible, and goes into the chakras, spiritual centers, and then down the spine, and out through the nervous system, into the sense organs, and there we are lost in material consciousness. Now, With these techniques of pranayama, energy control, gradually we learn to withdraw that energy again inside, into your eyes and up the spine, and there gradually we have the higher experience. And then we see the difference. And so in the Gita, Krishna gives this illustration of a turtle which withdraws its limbs into the shell. And so the Gita says, so like the turtle, if you withdraw your faculties, your energy, your mind, everything inside, then you will have the experience of your soul. And another passage in the Gita, which says, undoubtedly the mind is fickle and unruly. That's manas, hard to pain. But by yoga practice and by dispassion, the mind may nevertheless be controlled. Now yoga practice, this is it. In meditation, you learn regular practice of the techniques, you withdraw the energy, you go inside. And dispassion means renunciation. The Gita very often refers to that, renunciation, as a main key in the teachings. Now, Krishna was a householder, he had family. He taught the science to Arjuna, was a householder, he had family. Renunciation here in the Gita does not mean to be a monastic. It's deeper than that. It means to renounce once and for all the idea that anything in this world can give us the ultimate fulfillment. So, you go on, you practice best you can, live a righteous life, fulfill your duties to family and all that sort of thing. You play your role, try to play it not for ego satisfaction, but play it well to satisfy the movie director, God. And you combine this with regular practice of meditation, practicing of the techniques. However, next point, there comes another phase. Many devotees do not understand this and do not know how to handle it and have a wrong attitude. And it's important that everyone understands. Because when we begin on a spiritual path, everything is glorious. We are getting a great gift from God. And we do not know that it's a gift from God. We think it's natural. Namely, initial enthusiasm to get the ball rolling, so to speak. And then you feel wonderful because suddenly now you have a new sense of direction, life makes sense, you have a goal, and you feel so wonderful. Many of the things, maybe bad habits and stuff, are pushed aside because they do not fit into the picture anymore. And you feel so good you want to convert the whole world. And even a dog and a cat have to become vegetarians. And then after a while, something happens. Namely, that initial enthusiasm fades away. And you're in darkness. And some of the saints have called this period the dark night of the soul. And there was a woman who wrote to me some years ago, in the beginning I felt God and Guru carried me, and then they dropped me. And I feel deserted and angry. Now Guru and God do not drop us. But this is a new phase which every devotee has to go through, more or less, sometimes more than once. And it is a period to teach us to grow up spiritually. Grow up. Namely, the initial experiences, spiritual experiences, are usually not pure spiritual. There's sensuality in the sense of, you have to understand that the true senses are in the astral body, not in the physical body. And so in meditation you can see all kinds of colors and picture shows, imagination plays a big role, and emotions, just... And it's not pure feeling. I tell you experience. That was during Master's lifetime. There was a young man who came into the ashram, and after a while he started to talk to us, and he said he heard Master was talking to him inside in meditation. And I was fairly new, and it didn't sound right to me. And I said, but that voice that is speaking to you, is that the same thing? Does he speak the same thing as when Master talks to us? He said, no, the inner, that's the real thing. Didn't sound right at all. But I was not in a counseling position at that time, so kept my mouth shut. I thought, Master knows what's going on, and so it's his problem. And then after a few months, that young man left. And then I wanted to know. I went to Master, I said, sir, he heard your voice inside. Was that you speaking to him? Master said, no. It's all a projection of his own subconscious. And I tried to tell him, and he wouldn't believe me. So the initial experiences, they are mostly, you know what Master says? A novice yogi is looking for spiritual entertainment. And he said most of the experiences that a person has in the beginning are hallucinations, projected. Now, we have to understand, we are living in an instant satisfaction society, right? We are used to have instant satisfaction. So people come on a spiritual path and they want to have instant spiritual experience. They want to have God now. It's not possible. Why? Because we are not pure enough in the beginning. We do not have the mastery over the instruments yet. The life force, the mind, emotions, all that. And so it is at that stage, it is not possible to receive the experience of God, the pure, essential aspects of God. It's not possible. I compare this with a man who wants to become a concert pianist. Does he go out in a concert hall to perform? No. First comes practice, practice, practice until he has mastered the piano, right? Very similar on the spiritual path. Not only that, we're starting out with ego consciousness, right? Coming on your spiritual path. Now, how do you feel if somebody comes to you and every day comes and says, give me this, give me this, give me that, and so on? Does he love you? No way. But most devotees come on a spiritual path exactly that attitude. Come to God, give me this, give me this, give me this, give me that. Right? That has to go. The ego has to go, selfishness has to go. Selflessness is one of the basic, most important keys in meditation. And that is why, Jesus said, the pure in heart shall see God. Exactly. We have to overcome selfishness so that we can love God purely. I give you my love. I practice. It's up to you to give me what you feel is right. Always hold it. That is pure love, unselfish love.